This video is about a specific way to walk through the key inner work for Twin Flames exercise when you have narcissistic abuse trauma or CPTSD or both, or as one conglomerate of a trauma inside yourself. So without further ado, here's the answer. There's no special way. You just do it. Key version 1 or version 2. I am upset with my twin flame because they did this and this to me and it makes me feel this, that, and the other. I want them to recognize me, or I want them to whatever I truly feel, even if it's angry. Underneath that emotion, I feel a deeper longing. I do feel a deep longing for actually allowing myself to feel deep peace, because that is truly here already. Whatever you actually feel underneath that is already there. And then the last step is, I'm someone that, and then you repeat what you said in number 3. And you claim that as something that you already have and are, because otherwise you couldn't long for it or desire it. So you must know that that is already something that is within your grasp. And you state that as something that you already have. So you step into that. It's how you answer yourself. And you can even embody that for other people to see, so that you have a role, you have a mission. There you go. Key version 2. I'm upset because my twin flame did this and that to me and it makes me feel this, that, and the other. Step 2. I'm turning everything that was pointed around, that was pointed to them or the world, around to myself. I'm upset with myself because I did this and this to myself and it makes me feel this, that, and the other. Step 3. What do I need to feel loved here? Yeah, I need to... Oh no, step 3 is that true? Yeah, it's true. It's always true. So step 4 is, what do I need to feel loved here, right? And I do feel that I just need a hug and I need love and I need to send myself love and allow myself to receive love and allow myself to let my inner child receive love. Maybe the inner child says something to me that is relevant and I will give that to the inner child right now. There's also key version 3, and that's for trauma healing, and you can only do that with me when you are in a student relationship with me for a longer time, and I can give that to you. It's a specific way of targeting trauma that I am allowed to give to you since, at this moment, we're in September 2025, approximately since 1.5 years. So there you are. And that's how that goes. You just do it. But it is clear that you need to come out of the below zero zone. That your unconscious is completely effed. And you need to release and reprogram that. And you need complete mother and father healing. Probably when you were the victim of genuine narcissistic abuse by your parents or carers as a child. What is specific is also that there will be a lot of resistance to the transference, to speak in psychological speak. In other words, resistance to doing the inner work. In other words, even being numbed out, you're numbed out. And wanting to keep it like that, yeah, that's probably a lot the case for you. And it will mean moving through a lot of anger, yeah, of course, and grief. and let go. Many things to let go. Growing up with a narcissistic parent, being punished for individuation is completely the opposite of what you need, because you need to already come out of that to even do the first key step one ever that you're gonna take. You can't even do key number one when you are being in the inner child that is the result of the narcissistic abuse, where you're punished for individuation. You can't even do step one. So you need to come out of that to be able to do key step one. And then we're not even talking about the rest of the 3 steps, and the fact that you need to do that over and over and over and over and over and over, so that it forms a journey for you that you are going to be following, and you let yourself be guided in that by a true twin flame teacher. That can eventually also beam the consciousness state of harmonious twin flame union to you, what it is all about. So what does it mean? It will just be excruciatingly difficult for you to do the key twin flame inner work when you have genuine narcissistic abuse trauma or CPTSD that looks like it from some sort of abuse in your childhood, stretched out over longer periods of time. That's why it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. C, complex, not post-traumatic stress disorder like one disaster that happened at once. And that's it, clearly being able to point to it. But it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, like you have been under traumatic inducing strain for long stretches of time, for instance 18 years until you were an adult during your childhood. So that's what they call that. It will just be incredibly difficult for you to even do step one of the key exercise that I, by the way, have a lot of info about in my Facebook group called Your Abundance, in the posts that are archived there, in the videos, in the pinned posts, in the downloads, in the file section. And I also have videos about that. I also have blogs about that on my website. And of course, you can work with me, right? Doing coaching, learning more about the key exercise and how you actually do it, and being guided by me through it. It will be excruciatingly difficult for you, because step one is, what do you even feel? And that's where it already starts to be excruciatingly difficult for you, because when you have been genuinely narcissistically abused as a child, you will not know what you feel, because that would mean that you individuate yourself from the enmeshed identity with the parent into a person of flesh and blood with emotions, a mental state, a body that stands on itself, that has feelings that you can name and point to with words. I am upset because this and this happened, and that makes me feel this and that. I'm upset because my twin flame did this and that to me, and that makes me feel this, that, and the other. So that is step one. And you won't be able to do that because it would need to mean that you individuate yourself to be able to describe what you genuinely feel. And that will be difficult for someone that is genuinely having narc abuse trauma. And I understand that. So if that is the case, then we need to start there. That's where you start. What are you even feeling? Are you allowed to pronounce that? And that's also why I made the video recently about the 13 steps to even freaking feel your feelings in the first place, right? So that's why I made that. So maybe that's for you. There's also a link in which you can get to this sort of 13-step course. It's for free, but there's also a video now on my channel that explains it, the main line of it, right? So, when you go further in the key exercise, you will see that you are going to need to turn something around. That's the essence of the meat of the key exercise for Twin Flame inner work. You need to turn something around emotionally and or also symbolically from what was in the world, and you turn it to yourself. I don't know if symbolically is the right word for that. Maybe we need to say more literally. You turn it to yourself and then you see what that gives. And this is going to be difficult for you because it will mean to feel in your actual body and energy and feelings and in your heart what is going on even deeper than step 1. And you will need to be able to allow a different statement to come in and to feel what that means to you. And then you need to come to a place of genuinely feeling what that gives you and where you reach, where that brings you. And that's where a lot of resistance might happen. You might say like, no, that's not the case. No, I don't feel that. No, I don't feel anything below that. No, I don't want to feel what that might mean to me when the turnaround is there. And you might try to resist what that brings up in like memories and like body memories and like something like that, because we will remember all kinds of traumatic things there, and that's okay. You can just let all those feelings come up, and then energetically it's like here, it's like in the cloud, and then you go even further and you love yourself there, and you round it off, and then you are past that cloud of all these memories and energetic problematic feelings, and you are suddenly completely tying it down to your true soul's awareness of who you are in your twin flame union, and you love yourself into it there, and that's how you get beyond these feelings. But you may have resistance to first having all these things come up. Like you don't recognize that as yourself. You don't recognize it as something that is you. You don't want that to be you. You don't want anything to be going on there with yourself. You will say no to that. You will say that is not true. That is wrong. Unconsciously or consciously or both. And that is how you sabotage your own inner work. And when you are a victim of genuine narcissistic abuse as a child, that's also what had been done to you as a child. You were continually sabotaged. Your feelings were hijacked and sabotaged. So you were not allowed to develop your own self as an individual when you were 18 months old until 3 years old. You need to become individuated from your mother, with whom you were one unit before, biologically and psychologically. And then you need to emancipate yourself from that unit to become your own person in psychological child development, right? And so you need to lose that outside object, and you need to replace that with an inside object in yourself. This might not exactly be how psychologists say it. I'm going to give a very simplified idea anyways, because I'm not a psychologist, and it's not the meaning of this video to be scientifically fully correct about that, but correct enough for me to bring you something to make you understand something. And that's where you need to become an individual so that you can start to relate to another object, another person. First you were part of it and it was one object, and now there's two objects, and you can now start to relate consciously, and you need to completely learn that as a child. But first you need to have the freedom to stand on your own 2 feet, even between 18 months and 3 years. Like psychologically, that is the place where that happens for you for the first time. And having narcissistic trauma means that separation has a psychological separation that everyone needs to go through. It's not twin flame separation, that's another level of being. We're not talking about that for a moment. That separation has not gone right, or has not happened at all, and that's the narcissistic trauma. That's the narcissistic problem. The narcissistic problematic thing is conceived there. Often people say like, yeah, but to have that really as like a personality disorder, it needs to be very bad, and it's to the best of my knowledge, the best of the specialists about this say that the real personality disorder, narcissism, is a combination of nature and nurture. So it needs to be some sort of in your genes already that goes wrong, and then it's also nurtured in that it indeed goes wrong in that phase, and that is further nurtured into being, and then it becomes a personality disorder. So, but for a lot of people, something goes wrong there already nevertheless anyway, even when they don't have a full-blown personality disorder or what have you. And you could say that that's how a narcissist that has the true personality disorder is formed, and that's like another kind of mentality altogether, another kind of consciousness almost. But it's also what goes wrong when this narcissist is the parent that is going to raise the child, and the child gets traumatized. Maybe he doesn't become a narcissist, but then it becomes traumatized nevertheless, right? It becomes, maybe there's an argument to say that these people that go like not in the narcissist direction, but they go the opposite direction in how it goes wrong in that person, and that becomes the empath that is so popular and everyone wants to be an empath, but maybe that's actually something went wrong and you just developed in the other side than the narcissistic personality disorder, but something went wrong nevertheless. So I'm not sure if it's such a good idea to be an empath, right? It's how your brain is formed. It's how everything is formatted like that. And it went wrong between 18 months and 3 years in that individuation process. Okay. And so when you haven't individuated correctly, you resist the idea that you can be precise and fully responsible and expressing of what you actually feel and what hurts you, because you think you're psychologically still in the unit with your parent, that we call that the mother, but that's more like a role, like the first parent, the primary caregiver when you were a super small child kind of role. And psychologists call it the mother, whatever the gender of it is, and just like the mother role, or whatever the biological or non-biological relationship to the child is, right? So, but you think you're still part of that unit of the mother-child, and everything is like vague and floating around, and you can't do step 1, or when you're deeper in the key exercise, you resist the fact that you are going to be precise and name what is going on, what is floating around and coming up. You resist that. You don't want to feel anything there, because you're sort of still in that unit together with that unconsciously you're there with that mother, where you're not individuated and you're just completely enmeshed, and you don't even understand that these are feelings that do belong to you, and that you can work with it, and that you can take responsibility for them by feeling them, so that they can transform and go away, and something else can come into place for that, which is 10 times more positive. That's the whole point of doing these exercises, because what comes in the place of it and doing the key exercise the correct way is something comes in that comes from the spiritual place of being a twin flame in union. And that energy goes into that place that you opened up, right? So you can't open up such a place because you think that is not even a place for you. Because you unconsciously think you're still in that enmeshed place. And you can't start to feel, well, what I said. You will actually need to move through a lot of anger, grief, and let go. But you're often not able to discern that you are angry and are full of grief, and you will let, and you have a big need of let go. You can't acknowledge that, right? So because that is what that is. It's like letting go and becoming your own person is like you need to be some sort of angry to be able to do that, because this anger is sane, it's healthy, it makes you stand on your own feet, right? And the grief is real and understandable, because you do grieve the fact that you earlier were in a very different perception of reality, and now you become standing on yourself perception of reality instead of being part of a whole as an unresponsible part or something. And that former reality dies. So that is a lot of grief. And you do let go of that former situation and the safety that it brought and whatnot. That's a necessary step psychologically for people that has often gone wrong. And so a lot of anger, grief, and let go has to be sort of then as a grown-up, you need to go through all of that, but because you hadn't before, so you will often, when you correctly go into the processing of the key exercise, go through a lot of anger, grief, and let go, specifically when you come from narcissistic abuse or CPTSD or things that swarm around it that look a little bit like it, right? Or like that transformation in childhood has not gone specifically right for you. And then it is often repressed, that there's you start to repress that, and you don't want to feel that anger, you don't want to feel that grief, because it's all negative and bad. But it's not negative and bad at all. You are supposed to feel the anger that is rightly there. And of course, also because being a victim of a narcissistic abuse as a child often means that you have been controlled the fuck out of yourself, right, by your narcissistic parent. And that is the same, that you're not allowed to be your own person, because you need to be controlled by the other person, by this mother figure or whatever this person was, that needs to bring you under control all the time, so that you go back into that unconscious, unhealthy enmeshment. And so it's also normal that you feel a lot of correct anger there as well. When you think about it, it's not only in the how it happened as a baby, as a child, but also like an older child or as a grown-up, how that influence all the time tries to suck you back in the controlled narcissistic relationship that is not a relationship, because it's not relating. It's pre-relating. It's in a psychological development pre-relationship, because this is relating, but not this. That's enmeshment. So it's pre-relating, and that's normal that you are incredibly angry about that, but maybe you're not allowing yourself to feel the anger because it's so-called negative. But nothing can be achieved or done when you don't allow yourself to feel that anger and grief. You can't even successfully go through the key exercise, which you need to start to train yourself into, to have a healthy and correct twin flame union. So again, it will just be extra difficult for you perhaps to start to do it, but it's not undoable. Maybe this video just brings you in an idea like, oh yeah, it's just extremely difficult for me, but I have to become genuine with myself and not numb my emotions out. And that's the only way to start to do the correct twin flame inner work. And that's the only way to move towards the consciousness state of harmonious union that it's all about. So there you go. So recently I read the essay of 1972 in a book, published in a book, and it's called Dead Mother by Andre Green. So I believe he's a French psychotherapist. I hope I say that right, although his name sounds so incredibly strangely English. So this confuses me a little bit. So maybe if you know more about that, let me know. The Dead Mother essay, I have a link. You can read it yourself. It's very psychotherapy in the early days language, but maybe you can wrestle your way through it and you get something out of it. The original paper, the original essay is in the link below. Recently, I was by the Christ Masters made aware that this is actually an article that is about the narcissistic child abuse recovery. That is making even more sense. Listen, I think the term narcissistic abuse trauma makes sense. And also the term narcissism and narcissistic abuse is very fashionable online at this moment. More and more people start to learn what can be wrong with their psychological awareness and beingness through that terminology. And that can be a good thing. It can also have bad parts because, you know, before you know it, everyone is a narcissist and it just doesn't mean anything anymore. And that can be problematic. Now, I have also thought about my relationship with my parents in these terminologies for some time, and that was helpful, you know, to get some basics down about what was actually going on. But then actually, Andre Green's essay Dead Mother, which is in itself in a way also famous, or maybe it's not that well known. I actually don't know. Maybe it should be famous. Well, anyway, let's leave that one to the side. It does not necessarily really use the word narcissism or narcissistic abuse or narcissistic parent that much or at all. I think it's mentioned only once, at least that I can remember right now. And it speaks of something that is maybe very helpful to understand, that brings it more into a general principle or something. Because there's also a lot of over-the-top-ish things about narcissism out there and whatnot. Although I think this term can bring us to clarity, and we refer to something that people understand something about, right? But Dead Mother brings something into scope that is maybe much more fundamental about this thing, this problem. And that is that Dead Mother means that the mother role, whomever it is, that you have as a newborn baby and a growing very young child, that mother is dead, but not in a physical sense in her grave, but psychologically dead. When you have a mother role figure that is psychologically not alive, not available to you, is depressed, is alcoholic, is narcissistic, is not present, doesn't like being a mother, doesn't have an inner self, that's the point what we just talked about, right? This whole thing, when that goes wrong in the development of the baby from 18 months to 3 years old, and you're not standing on your own 2 feet there, you're still merged with the mother role, then you don't have a self. So maybe that this mother role didn't have a self herself for some sort of reason. And it really doesn't really matter why. That's more or less what speaks out of Andre Green's essay, Dead Mother. When you have dead mother, you as a baby, you're born from the mother, okay? And then, but the mother is dead. She's not emotionally available. Because she's a narcissist, she's this, it doesn't, whatever. She doesn't like being a mother. All kinds of reasons. She's depressed. The baby doesn't have a self yet. It needs to borrow the self from the mother figure role. Until that phase comes in which they need to be angry at their mother and stand on their own and grieve. And let go the former reality perception and enter a new reality perception. So this baby doesn't have a self, and it needs to borrow the self from the mother figure. It needs to know through this entire development what it is to have a self. And then it can have a self. And then it can function on its own. But this mother figure doesn't have a self. Or in other words, they're at -1 or something. You know, they're not even at 0, like, oh yeah, I'm just, you know, a mother that is very insecure about herself or something. Okay. But no, it's really pathological. It's -1. They're -1 for whatever reason. So you as the baby, you become -1 as well. So you don't exist. And this also doesn't go right. And you still don't exist. You don't exist. Because the mother was not psychologically available. She's at -1. And now you are at -1. So you live, you biologically live, but your psychology is not developed further than -1. Your psychology says, I don't exist. I don't exist for my own feeling life, my emotional life, my internal life, my actual life. Okay, we understand that you are still eating and pooping and sleeping. Okay, but that's not the life, you know, that's not the psychological life from the development of the self. So that stands at -0. You're nobody. You don't exist. You only exist as the baby, as part of the mother. And you need to develop an entire self from scratch. You need to slowly go from -1 to -0.5, -1/4, and to 0. Or however you want to see this development, right? And when you're at 0, you're just maybe just a normal, vulnerable person. And then you start to grow to 1 or something. And then that might mean something like, now I'm a self-aware, mature, emotionally mature adult or something. You know, that's 1. So you need to work yourself from -1 to 0. And how are you going to do that? With the key exercise. But it might feel awful because you need to become genuine that you are at -1 and that you have no self. And you don't exist. And you need to go through that phase from -1 to 0. And then you need to go to 1. I think you need to go to 1, right? Because then you can have a relationship with your ultimate lover. But the key exercise was actually meant to bring you to harmonious union. So you just have sort of like extra ground to cover. Maybe that's not the right expression. Extra. Well, that's the whole journey. You need to go from minus to 0, and then also the rest. Yeah. And you can do that with the same tool. But that's like the extra story that you might need together with it. Well, there you go. If you want to read the Dead Mother essay, it can be enlightening. It's below, but it's quite heavy, so to speak. It's scientific literature. But I was shown that this is actually a better way to talk about this phenomenon, and then we're also sort of gotten rid of this whole thing about what is narcissism and all the stories around it that are somehow warped on the internet and whatnot. And although it is a very well-known term, and that has a function too. So I hope this helped. Much love from Petra.